Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're delving into a day that forever changed aviation history, March 27, 1977. This is the story of the Tenerife Disaster, the deadliest accident in the history of flight, a tragedy born from a perfect storm of unfortunate events. Our story doesn't begin on the beautiful island of Tenerife, but hundreds of miles away in Gran Canaria, a popular holiday destination. Two Boeing 747s were en route to Gran Canaria Airport, Pan Am Flight 1736 from Los Angeles, and KLM Flight 4805, a charter from Amsterdam. But they would never land there as planned. A terrorist bomb had exploded in the terminal at Gran Canaria, forcing authorities to close the airport and divert all incoming flights to a much smaller regional airport on the neighboring island of Tenerife, Los Rodeos Airport. Los Rodeos was not equipped to handle such a massive influx of traffic, especially not multiple jumbo jets. The airport had only one runway and a parallel taxiway, connected by a few smaller links. As planes were diverted, the taxiway became a makeshift parking lot, forcing departing aircraft to backtrack down the active runway to get into takeoff position. It was a logistical nightmare waiting to unfold. On board the KLM 747, Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten was one of the airline's most senior and respected pilots. He was their chief flight instructor and was even featured in their magazine ads. But on this day, he was under immense pressure. Strict new duty time regulations meant that if his crew didn't depart soon, the flight would be canceled, stranding hundreds of passengers and costing the airline a fortune. His mind was set on getting back in the air as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the Pan Am crew, led by Captain Victor Grubbs, sat on the tarmac, their patience wearing thin. After hours of waiting, Gran Canaria finally reopened. They were ready to leave, but the massive KLM jet was blocking their path to the runway. They had to wait for the Dutch plane to refuel before they could even think about moving. As the KLM jet finished refueling, adding tons of extra weight, a new problem emerged. A dense, thick fog began to roll in from the hills, swallowing the airport. Visibility dropped to just a few hundred meters, making it impossible for the pilots to see each other, or for the control tower to see the planes on the runway. The stage was now set for disaster. The air traffic controllers, working under immense stress with unfamiliar procedures and heavy accents, instructed the KLM flight to backtrack down runway 12 and prepare for takeoff. They then told the Pan Am flight to follow the KLM jet down the same runway and to exit onto the third taxiway, clearing the runway for KLM's departure. Here's where critical miscommunications began. The Pan Am crew was unfamiliar with the small airport and couldn't identify the unmarked third taxiway in the fog. They believed the angle of the turn was too sharp for a 747 anyway, and decided to proceed to the fourth taxiway, which was a more logical turn. They communicated this, but the tower seemed preoccupied. In the KLM cockpit, Captain Van Zanten was getting impatient. With the engines spooled up, he said, "We're going." His first officer, who was handling communications, was in the middle of receiving their ATC clearance. This clearance was not a takeoff clearance, but the route they were to fly after takeoff. The first officer read back the clearance, finishing with the non-standard phrase, "We are now at takeoff." The controller in the tower, hearing this, became confused and replied, "Okay," followed by, "Stand by for takeoff, I will call you." Simultaneously, the Pan Am crew, hearing the KLM transmission, urgently radioed, "We're still taxiing down the runway, Clipper 1736. Tragically, these two crucial transmissions overlapped. In the KLM cockpit, they heard the controller's "okay," but a high-pitched squeal, known as a heterodyne, obscured the Pan Am crew's desperate warning. Believing they were cleared, Captain Van Zanten pushed the throttles to full power. The massive 747 began its takeoff roll, accelerating into the blinding fog. Inside the Pan Am jet, the crew saw the KLM's landing lights emerge from the fog, coming straight at them at terrifying speed. Captain Grubbs yelled and pushed the engines to full power, making a hard left turn to get off the runway. In the KLM cockpit, the flight engineer heard the Pan Am transmission and questioned the captain, but it was too late. Veldhuizen van Zanten saw the Pan Am jumbo jet directly in his path and yanked the controls back, trying to prematurely lift off. The tail of the KLM 747 scraped the runway for 20 meters, but it managed to get airborne just barely. It wasn't enough. The landing gear and lower fuselage of the KLM plane sliced through the top of the Pan Am jet,